my recommended budget actually anticipated one
language skills and appreciating over the years.
Thumbnail's a little tough. It's it covers so many elements. It is closely based on the Billy Wilder film, and in its style, it covers not only personal relationships, but really very strongly covers Hollywood of the 40s and the changes and what was occurring in the studios and in that art form as things changed, and very much how Hollywood of that time then was starting to become the machine. It's not in the sense that it necessarily lost its art form, but the studios were becoming the machines, and what that did to the stars and the people in the business. As they grew more and more powerful, the stars and the writers, all of the directors, and all of that artistic element was becoming much more and more commercially driven and, as I say, part of a working machine. Andrew Lloyd Webber, he does that. There is kind of a running feeling out there that he hates women because he writes these incredibly impossible roles for them to sing. And the range and the emotion combined is extremely difficult and draining on the female performers. And just musically, the way it's written, it's not even just that it's a high range, but the jumps from the highs to the lows and the counterpoint that's written into some of it, and then combining that with how intense the role actually is and the level of emotion that needs to be brought out, which works completely counterintuitive to them being able to sing well. So it is an immense challenge for that role, especially Norma. We are incredibly lucky to have a wonderful woman named Anne Crum. She has performed for years. She performed many shows in London and the West End. She has worked actually literally with Andrew Lloyd Webber before. She did a production of Aspects of Love, which was one of Webber's shows in London. And so she's worked directly with him. This role she has never done. She's never done Sunset. And it's, again, an interesting role because it takes a woman of a certain age. That is the whole point of she's a, quote, aging star. And so having a woman that has to be at least 50 and be able to create this role and go through what this character requires is a huge challenge. And Anne is amazing. All of her years of experience are certainly, she's putting that to use, her knowledge and her technique and her style. And yet I think in many ways the role of Norma is probably one of the strongest characters in many, out of all of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals, because it runs at such a high emotional level. So that it really is a difficult role to cast. And auditioned for us in New York and was incredible. And since she already does know the style and in so many ways fits the characterization that we were looking for and her ability to bring that strength. So I think it's going to be amazing. We've watched, we're in the middle of our second week of rehearsal, and we're just finishing up the basic staging, and yet there are moments that it's almost frightening to watch her, how good she is, and yet in this kind of somewhat crazy character, it gets a little frightening. we're going to use the fountain from 9, and no, it's one of those things that sometimes you just want to shoot the authors. It's like, why would you do that? But the difficulty is, it is because this musical is based on the film, and that is a major plot point in the film. So it really has to be there. It's not just a staging extravaganza like some things are. It really needs to be there to move the plot along. But how we're doing it's a secret. One of the probably other iconic features of the show is the staircase in Norma's mansion. It's been used over and over in different other movies. It's been parodied in different ways of Norma coming down the staircase. So oddly enough, the staircase almost becomes an element of its own, almost a character. And so it was very important to be able to work with that in a functional way, as opposed to our normal method of, okay, we tape it out on the floor and say this is the staircase. But actually being able to use the steps and the different heights to create the visual impact I'm looking for, as well as how Norma physically walks and moves through that space. It's a huge undertaking to create that, and as always, Brian shines again. His work is amazing. He not only approaches it from a practical point of what we need for the show, but artistically he creates his own piece of art on stage each time. My goal in every production we do here is to make a close connection with our audience. It still goes back to that, you know, if anybody who has seen Sunset before, the only way they would have seen it would have been in New York or London, or on one of the major tours when it came through in the national tour. So it would have been in one of the very large theaters and the very large productions. One of the reasons the tour did not do well was because it was so expensive, because it was so large, that their costs were overwhelming anything they could make in the show. And we always approach the show from what really is the grounding element of the show, not the spectacle, but what is the show about. And I think that is exactly, again, what will come out very clearly in this show. It's so easy to look at Norma Desmond and you know, remember all the comic parodies and this crazy woman. And my goal with this production is for our audience to understand her, where she came from, what made her this way, that she's just not some crazy, insane person to watch, that you understand what she went through and how she got to this point. There have been so many versions, and everybody's familiar with, especially theater people, with the Patti LuPone version, the Glenn Close version, Betty Buckley. All of the divas of the theater world have played this role. And everyone has had a slightly different style and approach. And I feel confident in saying that Anne's performance is going to be amazing, and maybe better than some of the others.